about the time your president stood up here to pray tonight, something very special happened. I don't know if you felt it, but I'll ask you to consider whether or not you did. He alluded to it. He said the Sabbath is about ready to begin. And I have been reflecting recently that Sabbath time is holy time, sanctified and set apart by God. There's something different about it, something very special about it. And we are here tonight to enjoy that. What a privilege that is. It's amazing that God gave us this gift, a gift of time, of all the gifts He might give us, and of course eternal life, the ultimate gift. But I've also reflected on how when God used the Sabbath for rest, He rested in goodness. Everything He made was good, perfect. He could rest in goodness. His son would one day say, it is lawful to do good on the Sabbath. The Sabbath is a time to celebrate goodness, and tonight I would invite you with me to celebrate the goodness of God. The theme is powerful this week, digging deeply in God's Word, revealing God's hearts. And I have a question this evening. How do we know that we can trust God's heart when we can't trust our own? I want to repeat that because some of you may still be recovering from supper. How do we know that we can trust God's heart when we know we can't trust our own? It's an important question. A number of years ago, I read a book. It was a long time ago, and I don't remember the story as well as maybe those who read it more recently. The title of the book was Peace Child. How many of you read the book or saw the movie? Well, a few of you. All right. An interesting story about a young couple who feels called of God to go to a primitive, cannibalistic culture and share the gospel, not something everybody feels called to do. They show up where this tribe lives, and they spend a long time with them learning the language. How do you witness until you learn the language, except for the life you live? I guess you don't eat anybody else yourself. That's a witness, right? They learn the language, they pray about it, they watch these people, they try to develop a relationship with the people in this tribe, and when they think the time is right, they feel as though this is the time, they call the people around a fire. You can go anywhere in the world, and people love to gather around a campfire and hear a story. They do, even Camp Kalakwa, right? So the fire is burning, the whole village is gathered around. This couple has promised to tell a story, and so they do. They tell the story of the gospel. They tell the story about God above who comes down to earth to rescue man who has sinned and who's doomed to die, and how Jesus dies on a cross to save everyone from their sins, and then He's gone back to heaven. And the people, they're watching the people, and the people are responding. Their body language is just screaming, this is good, we like this. And so they're feeling as though the Spirit is really moving. And at the end of their story of the gospel, they ask the people of the tribe, so what do you think of Jesus? And to their dismay, the people respond, Jesus? Oh, we hate Jesus. Don't tell us any more stories about Jesus. But do you have any more about Judas? Judas? Yeah. Tell us more about Judas. He's our hero. Well, this did not go according to plan. And this couple was completely mystified. What was this? It was the story of the gospel. It was the good news. It ought to be universal good news to anybody, anywhere. Why were they fans of Judas? So they decided to observe some more, something they might have been wiser to do to begin with. And as they did, they discovered to their dismay, in fact to their horror, that they found themselves living in a culture of betrayal. where the ultimate achievement would play out something like this. You would be a member of that tribe, which would make you an enemy of the next tribe. Anyone in the next tribe would just as soon eat you as greet you. You would do the same, of course. So the ultimate experience in that culture was to risk your very life as a prospective betrayer. To get in your canoe, go down the river, and stay out at a safe distance from the other tribe, but go by their village and yell out something friendly, something fairly neutral, so they wouldn't be either too alarmed or too suspicious, but yell out something like, well, the fish aren't biting much today. Have you had any luck? Or what are you trying? What kind of lure you're using? Just something kind of neutral, and see if anybody on the bank responds to you. And if you get anybody to interact with you, you have the beginning of a relationship. This is how relationships begin. And so you pick out your chosen victim, and you come back another day, and you see if your victim is there, and if they are, you call out to them, and you begin to just talk about things that are fairly neutral. You are taking great risk. They can come out and kill you and eat you at any time, and they may well do it. In fact, certainly some of the time, this is exactly what happens. That's what makes it risky. But the goal is to so befriend your victim in the other tribe that that individual will believe, fully believe, that you are their friend and you can be trusted. And to prove that you can be trusted, you will take the greatest risk of all, because you will accept your friend's invitation to come to a feast in his village, knowing full well that you could be dessert. You will do that to achieve what I'm describing. And should you survive the meal and not be part of it, you'll spend the night in your friend's hut showing total trust, so that in turn, when you invite your friend to your village, your friend is absolutely convinced, given the risk you are taking, that you are completely trustworthy. And again, if you survive all of that, you will in time, when you think the bond is strong and unbreakable, when you know this person is your friend as well as you and I have known in our lives that a person was our friend even when they weren't. When you know they're hooked, you reel them in. We're having a feast in our village. Yours was good. Ours is going to be better. You've got to be there. I don't want you. I'm jealous for you. You got to taste this food. I mean, you guys can cook. That's all right, but you got to try what we have. It's really special. You'll like it. And so your friend, if it all goes according to plan, and rarely does it, this is a rare achievement, which is why it's so special in this culture, but if it all works, your friend comes to your village. You have a great feast. You gorge yourselves. You visit. You have entertainment. You have the academy choir over to sing. And then you all go to sleep for the night. And in the middle of the night, because you work so hard at this, it is your privilege, your honor, to wake your friend up and tell him that you are going to eat him. And then that's what you do. In that culture, if you could do something like that, you were an instant star. There was a song written about you that was #1 on the charts. They might build a hut for you. They would honor you in the village. You would be famous all your days. You had done the ultimate thing, betraying someone so thoroughly, so completely. So how do you tell them the story of Jesus Christ, who was betrayed? Because he's not the hero. He's not. You know, when I read that story, and I'll finish it in a little bit, and if I don't remember, somebody say, please finish the story or we can't sleep tonight. When I read that story, I was troubled. And I'll tell you why. I was troubled because I realized that that story was describing my life. I mean, let's be honest with ourselves. You don't have to live on some cannibalistic island out in some isolated place to understand how completely somebody can betray you and cannibalize you. It's built into the human heart. It's part of what it means to be human. All of you, at least in the glare of spotlights, look very trustworthy to me, but I already know you're not. I'll tell you why in a moment. You're not. I'm not either, and I don't know how I look to you, and please don't tell me. It troubled me when I read that story, because not just to know that somebody lived their lives so far away in such a bizarre way, but to realize how close to home it was. You say, what are you talking about? Well, I can illustrate it very easily. When I was in college, I fell in love. This happens sometimes. There was a young lady who captured my heart, and we were in a music group together, and it was one of those proverbials, we made beautiful music together, and so it was kind of sickening, I suppose, to observers, but it was special to us. For an entire semester, we just spent all our time together. My grades plummeted, my love life soared. It was just amazing, and we began to go through an experience that when I became president of a college, I actually enjoyed watching in all the wrong kinds of ways, I suppose. There is something to be said for enjoying human suffering when you're not touched by it. The spring of the year, on every campus I've ever been on, you could see it play out. Nobody has to explain it, and it's fascinating to watch. It's miserable to experience. Because you have couples who have been together day after day after day, and they're so in love, and then they have to deal with parting. Oh, how are they going to survive? They don't know. We didn't know. How were we going to survive a whole summer without each other? It couldn't be done. So we formulated a plan. Seemed like a great plan. In the middle of the summer, about the point we would perish without each other, we would meet at a point halfway between my house and her house. I would pick her up. I would take her to my house. I would introduce her to my mother. My parents were divorced by that point. I was living with my mother. She would spend the weekend with me. It would be great. We could get through the summer. We both agreed, this is marvelous. This is wonderful. So we went home, sustained by the thought we would get together. In between that point and the middle of the summer, we sent letters to each other. This is before email. This is before texting. This is before internet. So this is snail mail. And I had to picture post people carrying those letters wearing gloves so they would not be affected by the radioactive love material inside. I mean, these letters were just full of gushy sentiments. I love you so much. I cannot live without you. I can't wait. And back and forth in the mail. Every time I would get a letter from her, it would just boost my spirits. I'd think of this day. And the day finally came, and I was just on fire. This is the day. This has kept me alive. This is great. I drove to the rendezvous point, got out of my car, halfway between her house, my house. She was there. This was perfect for about 10 seconds. When I opened the door for her to get in the car, I said, "Hi, this is great. Aren't you excited?" And she said, and this would be about the tone. "Yeah, I guess so." Now, on a scale of 1 to 10 on the excitement scale, that's about a -3. So as I got in and began to drive, we had this silly little argument. I said, "What's the matter?" She said, "Nothing's the matter." No, I should have stopped, but I didn't understand women well enough yet. I didn't realize you can never win the argument about is something the matter. So I kept arguing. Something is clearly the matter. What's the matter? Just tell me. I can deal with it. Nothing's the matter. Well, you're obviously upset. I am not upset. And we were going down the road, and we were about to get on the ramp to the freeway. It was dark, and my mind was racing, trying to understand what was going on and keep up with it. And I said, you got to tell me what's the matter. This is ridiculous. And she said, well, if you're going to make me, then I will. I said, okay, I'll make you. Tell me, what's the matter? And she said, it's over. Nobody ever accused me of being fast. I couldn't compute that. I said, it's over. Yeah, it's over. What's it? She said, you are so dumb. I love the way she built me up, you know. We're over. We're history. We're done. Now, I'm driving down the road still, but I'm a danger to people now. And I said to this girl, what do you mean we're over? I'm picking you up. I'm taking you to my house. I'm introducing you to my mother. You're going to spend the weekend with me. I've been looking forward to this all summer. Your last letter said you couldn't wait. Well, I lied. About that time, I was getting on the freeway, but very troubled by lights coming at me, wondering why are people driving, you know, up the ramp my way? What's wrong with these people? To realize that I was going up the off-ramp. So I backed up, I got on the freeway, I was going down the freeway. At that point, I didn't know much, I didn't feel much, and what I did feel didn't feel good. When I saw the blue lights in the rearview mirror. This was going to be the perfect day. So I pulled over. This is back in the day when they told you to get out of your car to show that you had nothing to hide and go back to the policeman. Please don't do that today. So I got out of the car. I had nothing to hide, and I didn't care if he shot me. I went back to him, and I said, yes, sir. He said, do you know why I stopped you? I said, I don't know anything right now. He said, well, you were speeding. I said, I believe you. He said, do you know how fast you were going? I said, I have no idea. He said, you were doing 85 and a 65. I said, that's pretty fast, isn't it? He said, yes, it is. He took out his ticket book. He began to get the information and fill it in. But I have to believe that in Police Academy, they train you to deal with individuals like myself. There's a certain profile that tells you somebody's in real trouble and they need help. So as he was filling it out, he was just looking at me, and I was looking at him and waiting for him to fill out the ticket, and he stopped. He stopped writing, and he looked at me, and he said, son, is there anything you'd like to tell me? I said, do you have time? He said, well, I got a little bit of time. I said, I'll make it a little bit of a story. I said, do you see the back of the head of that girl in my car? And she was sitting up there. And he looked, said, yes, I do. I says, does the back of her head look normal to you? He said, you know, kind of a trick question, I guess. I said, well, it's not. I want to tell you what she just did to me. So I told this policeman what this girl had just done to me, and I'll never forget the look on his face. When I was done, his mouth was just open. He had stopped writing, which I took to be a good sign. He took the piece of paper he'd been writing on, my ticket, and in front of me, he tore it up. And he looked at me and he said, son, I understand. Now he said, you drive home as carefully as you can. I hope you get there. This is before the days of cell phones. I remember walking up the steps to my mother's upstairs apartment. My mother was waiting to meet the girl of my dreams. And when we walked in, I said, hi, Mom, and I said the young lady's name, and I said, this is my former girlfriend. Now, my mom had that look that the policeman had. And I spent that weekend doing everything for this girl that I had planned to do. And why did I do that? I'll tell you why. Because months before she did that to me, she had found a valve in her heart. It's there. And she had shut it off. But mine was fully open, and I couldn't find the shutoff valve. So she felt nothing for me, and I felt everything for her, and I couldn't just magically suddenly change that. So I took her out to meals I really couldn't afford. I got her gifts I couldn't afford. We had a great time not. And I took her back to the halfway point and dropped her off. You don't have to be in some strange island culture somewhere where you don't know the language and people eat each other to understand that we live in a culture of betrayal. This is the world we live in. This is what it means to be human. And that's troublesome. Jeremiah 17, verse 9. Jeremiah 17, verse 9. Here's the good news from Scripture. The heart is deceitful above what? Oh, is that pretty deceitful? The heart is deceitful above all things and beyond what? Understanding. Who can understand it? Jeremiah 17:9. I want you to reflect this evening during these holy Sabbath hours that your beating heart, this thing that gets you through life, your beating heart is the most deceitful thing in the entire universe. And no one can understand it, including you. So how do you live on planet Earth with a deceitful heart, and how do you learn to trust God's heart? Because what is His heart like? I mean, it's chilling. I probably haven't learned a lot of lessons in life, but one of them I have learned is that I can't trust anybody. Not really. I can trust them to a point. I can trust them pretty far. But I can't ultimately trust anybody because I don't see how anybody can trust himself or herself. Because we have deceitful hearts. That's our condition in sin. That's the way it is. And there's a second challenge for it anyway. Not only are our hearts deceitful, but we change. Have you thought about that? We're not the same as the Bible says about God today and yesterday and tomorrow, are we? No, we change, and we change all the time. We may change from moment to moment and hour to hour. It doesn't matter, but we change. You think you know somebody, and you find out like that, you don't. And you thought you knew them really well. We can't trust our own hearts. We can't understand it. We can't trust other people's hearts. We don't understand them. Well, maybe the disciples who are with Jesus during His ministry every day, maybe they were more trustworthy, but of course not. Matthew 25, verses 31 to 35. You know this part of the story. Jesus is about to die on a cross. I mean, think of the burden He bears. He's about to die on a cross for all of us, including these men, His followers. And He says to them, you are all going to forsake me tonight, because He knows the human heart. You're all going to forsake me. And this is inconceivable to them, the same as it is time and time again in our own lives when we know we wouldn't do something and then we do it. Peter speaks. Peter is the unofficial spokesperson for the group over and over. Even if everyone else forsakes you, I won't. He means it. He absolutely means it. And Jesus says, oh no, Peter, tonight you're going to deny me 3 times. I'm not talking about tomorrow, the next day. You're going to do it tonight 3 times. And Peter is so worked up, he says, Lord, even if I have to die with you, I will never disown you. And the Scripture says, and all the disciples said the same thing. Oh, we know our hearts, don't we? They were so determined they would never betray their Lord, that they would stake their lives on it. And then they betrayed Him. It's the pattern of our lives on planet Earth. We pledge our love and our faithfulness, and we let others down, and we let ourselves down, and our deceitful hearts betray us over and over. The couple living among the cannibals observed closely, and one day they saw something they had never seen. Not the fighting. The tribes were fighting again. Men running back and forth, throwing spears at each other, trying to stab each other. They watched the fighting, but suddenly with no apparent reason, one of the tribesmen on one side ran back to his own village, not far away, grabbed a little baby out of the hut, ran back with the baby to the front lines where the fighting was going on, and handed the baby to his enemy. And his enemy put down his spear, took the baby, and the second he took the baby, the fighting stopped. It was like it never started, and they all just walked back to their villages. And the couple said, "What is this? What just happened?" So they asked someone from the tribe they were living with, "What's with the baby? What happened with that?" And they learned about the tradition of the peace child. They learned that if a member of one tribe was willing to go and give a baby from his tribe to a member of the other tribe, as long as that baby was alive, there would be no more fighting. There would be peace. This was the peace child. And they said, "Oh, we have a story to tell you. Gather around the campfire." They went back to the story of the gospel and they talked about Jesus again. And they said, "Jesus is the peace child." "Oh, yes, yes, he died, but he rose again and he's in heaven and he's there to intercede for us and to save us from our sins. And as long as he is alive, there is peace through him, and he will be alive forever. So there is always peace." And the whole tribe was converted, from a tribe of betrayal to a tribe of love, when they saw what God is really like. Well, if we aren't trustworthy, the question is, why is God trustworthy? If you can't trust your heart, why do you think you can trust his? Well, tonight, two things God can't do and one thing we can't understand. The first thing God can't do, please hear me clearly. I'm going to ask for the Spirit to carry this into your heart if it's not there. God cannot, God absolutely cannot stop loving you. God cannot stop loving us. He loves us fully, completely, unconditionally, at all times, in all circumstances. Why? Well, you find that in 1 John 4, verse 8. 1 John 4:16. They both say the same thing. This is powerful. He who does not love does not know God, for God is love. Now, I'm a former English teacher, so I know all about is, are, was, were. These are passive verbs. That means they show no action. I used to challenge my students on days when I was bored. I want you to walk after class today down the sidewalk, be as menacing as you can, go up to your chosen victim and tell them that you will is them as they have never been ised before, and see how they will respond. It's an idle threat. You can't is anybody, you can't are anybody. It's no action, but it's powerful. Why? Because is, are, these are verbs of being, a state of condition. So what is this text saying? It is saying this: God is love. Love is what God is made of. Love is his character, his composition. It is impossible for God to be unloving and be God, because God is love. It troubles me. It troubles me how we try to make God like us and what that does to us. And we need to think about what Scripture says about him. If God is love, then God loves us all the time. The beautiful thing about it is that God never, for a nanosecond in the history of eternity, has ever wrestled, even with Lucifer, with whether or not he would love. God is not like us. And I say, praise God. God doesn't wrestle with, ooh, I guess I should love you. God never makes a decision about love. We do all the time. We have to, because we are not love. I've enjoyed some wonderful introductions, thank you very much, but I've never been introduced as love. Like everybody else, I have to go through my day deciding whether I will love or whether I won't love. It's a continual choice that I make. But God never has to make that choice, never makes that choice, because He is love. There's no reason why He would do that. He has no choice to make. And the second thing God cannot do reinforces the first thing, because unlike us, God cannot change. So if God is love and God cannot change, then God is always love and therefore loving. Malachi 3:6, good news, for I am the Lord, and I do not change. And I love this one. I don't know if you know this text, Numbers 23:19. Listen to this. God is not human. God is not human. Thank you. That He should lie. That's the mark of being human. I love this text. God is not human that He should lie, nor a human being that He should change His mind. Amen. Isn't that interesting? I say praise God for the difference there is between Him and us. Wow. We can't understand our own hearts. We can't understand God's heart. His love is too much for us. Ephesians 3:17-19, powerful words on the love of God. And I pray that you, being rooted and established in love, may have power, together with all the Lord's holy people, to grasp how wide and long and high and deep is the love of Christ, and to know this love that surpasses understanding. You cannot grasp it, that you may be filled to the measure of all the fullness of God. Powerful. Well, I want you to hear me just as clearly with a couple more observations if you followed to this point. Because God is love and God can't change, there are two things we cannot do. Two things we cannot do. There is nothing we can do to cause God to love us any more than He already does. We should never think to ourselves that because we got up on a Sabbath morning when we were sick and we had a thermometer temperature that proved we had a fever, so we know we were sick, which makes us an Adventist martyr, to still go to church and share our germs with everybody else as a favor to God and to impress Him. Because it will not change one bit how much He loves us. No matter how kind we are to someone else, no matter how much we give of ourselves to someone else, no matter what we do in this life, it is impossible for God to love us any more than He already does. But we can't do anything to cause Him to love us anymore. And hear this then, we can't do anything to cause Him to love us any less. It doesn't matter how heinous, how awful, how unreportable in the news it is, how impossible to imagine, how ultimately evil it is. It is impossible for God to love us any less, because God is love. And God does not change. I'll close with this. I believe that it is very difficult for God, because He is so different from us, and we tend to focus on us so well and on Him so little. I believe it is very difficult for Him to try to get relationships with us, myself included, because of our deceitful hearts and what we read into that and what we read into Him. And I believe that God gets frustrated in His love because of what we assume about Him that is not true. And I learned this painfully, not from God, but from my grandfather. Now, my grandfather was one of the dearest people on earth to me. He spoiled me, and I thought it was wonderful. He loved me. He practically raised me. You know, my grandpa was older, more mature, he came to live in my house. My house. And I was honored and excited, and Grandpa moved in, and we went through all the adjustments you go through when even people you love so much move into your house. This is now our kitchen. What does that mean? Grandpa wanted to go a garden. Sure, you go ahead, Grandpa. Next thing I saw was a tractor in the backyard. He hadn't mentioned truck farm. After all the adjustments, life settled in day to day. Grandpa was there. Everything was like it was supposed to be. I loved my grandpa. In fact, I don't know I can tell you just how much I loved my grandpa, much as I could with my own deceitful heart. One day I came home from work. I was teaching at Southern Adventist University. I lived not far from there. I walked through the front door of the house we lived in, and in that house, when you went through the front door, you were looking through 2 rooms, through a patio door to the backyard. That was just how it was. So I walked through the front door that afternoon, done with work, walked in. Grandpa was up there. I could see him. He was working. I think he was working extra hard. And I saw Grandpa, and I started to turn to go down the hallway, and I stopped because I saw something in the patio door. I looked at it with alarm because there was a hole in my patio door that had not been there that morning. I'm sure of it. The size of a BB. And I thought to myself, there is a stalker in Collegedale. Somebody is shooting houses. This could be dangerous. And I looked at that hole, and I looked up at Grandpa, and I thought, well, surely not. Now, Grandpa used my BB gun periodically to either try to hit squirrels or to hit them. He was protecting the birds at the bird feeder. Very noble. But surely not. Well, I went up to Grandpa in the garden. My grandpa was a retired Seventh-day Adventist minister. He's a man I had looked up to all my life. I said, Grandpa, there's a BB hole in the patio door that wasn't there this morning. Did you happen to notice it? Oh, yes, I did. Well, do you know anything about it? No, I don't. No. He said, in fact, I think you need to talk to your 2 girls. I said, aha. Now, I was a former academy dean, and I was pretty good at some things. One of them was breaking down stories quickly so I could go to bed. So I pulled my 2 little girls in the family room, and I turned a bright light on them. Now, I had told both girls, if you touch the BB gun, your eyes will fall out. So it was hard to believe they had, but you never know. So I said, I want to know why you shot a hole in the patio door, because I always like to skip the did you do it or not stuff. And they looked at me, and they both pointed to their eyes and said, we didn't touch the BB gun. You know, they had the proof. And what could I do with that? So there were 2 remaining suspects, but they were weak. One was my wife. She wasn't home from work yet, and she had an alibi. And the other was the dog, and it was the most uncoordinated little creature I had ever seen. It was impossible to think it could shoot anything, accidentally or otherwise. So for a period of months, I would walk by my patio door. I would see the hole in the patio door. I would think to myself, they're out there somewhere. And I would wonder who it is and why did they shoot at my house. And one night in the quiet of the evening, after I'd been home for a while and the whole family was home and they were in one end of the house and I went to the other end of the house towards the kitchen to get a glass of water, I went by Grandpa's room and he yelled out to me as I went by, "Datey boy." He called me Datey boy. Isn't that nauseating? My wife hated that. I thought it was pretty special. "Datey boy, come in here a minute. I want to talk." "Sure, Grandpa, absolutely." I went in and I sat down. I was feeling pretty lighthearted that day. I remember that. And he seemed very serious, unusually serious. And he said, "I need to tell you something." I said, "Okay, Grandpa, tell me. What do you want to tell me?" He said, "You know that BB hole?" I said, "Grandpa, I have it memorized. I know it." Well, I know who did it. I looked at my grandpa, who had told me he didn't know, and it was apparent to me immediately he had lied to me. My own grandfather had lied to me. This had never happened. I'd never heard him lie to anybody else, never even heard him lie to himself. He had lied to me. That was inconceivable. I said, Grandpa, you told me you didn't know. He said, I know what I told you, and I know what I'm telling you. He started to get upset. I said, okay, all right. So you know, all right. Who was it? He said it was me. I said, Grandpa, you shot a hole in my patio door? Yes. I was trying to hit a squirrel. Didn't hit it. Well, then I have just one question for you. What's that? Why didn't you just tell me? And what my grandpa said is still hard for me to talk about. It broke my heart. My grandpa, who I loved with as much human love as I possibly could, said to me as grandson, I didn't tell you because I was afraid you would kick me out of your house. And I thought for just a moment how absolutely impossible that was from my perspective. And I thought for just a moment about the challenge before me to convict my grandfather of my love for him. And I got my grandfather up and I said, we're going out to the shed. Now, because you have deceitful hearts, you're going down the wrong trail. My grandpa and I had built that shed. In that shed was a sledgehammer. A sledgehammer is used to destroy things. It's very effective. I said, Grandpa, we're going to go to the shed. We're going to get the sledgehammer out. You shot a BB hole in a patio door. That's pathetic. We can do better than that. Let's take this sledgehammer and let's knock the whole door out. I mean, that would be fun, wouldn't it? But let's don't stop there. Let's think big, Grandpa. I mean, let's take the house down. Let's take it window by window, frame by frame, structure by structure. Let's take the whole thing down, but let's don't stop there. I don't like rubble, do you? Let's burn it. Let's burn whatever's left of this house when we take it down, Grandpa, and let's stand there by it, our own bonfire, this house burning up, my house burning up, your house burning up right there. And Grandpa, I want you to know, I want you to understand that when that house is all burned up and all that's left is some little piece of black ash that's been up floating in the sky, and it comes back down to earth and it rests right by it, right there, then Grandpa, I'm going to put my toe on a part of that piece of ash, and I want you to put your toe on a part of that piece of ash, because my home is your home no matter where it is. I said, Grandpa, there is nothing you could do in life, nothing, that would ever cause me, your grandson, not to want you in my house. I love you too much. And my testimony tonight is that God is love. And there is nothing we can do in our lives, nothing, that would ever cause Him to not want us in His house. He wants us in His house fully, completely, and we must learn to trust His heart of love.